The first lie came wrapped in mahogany and brass. It arrived 3 days after the funeral, tucked inside a plain manila envelope with no return address, just my name, written in my father's handwriting. Inside was a single, old-fashioned key and a note. You'll know where it fits. Be careful who you trust. Dad. The thing is, I hadn't spoken to my father in over 10 years. He died suddenly. A heart attack, they said. Collapsed in his garden, face down in a pile of half-dug soil like he was searching for something when his heart gave out. He was 67 and alone, unless you count the neighbor's cat that kept showing up in the background of the police photos they emailed me. I hadn't planned to go to the funeral. But my sister, Leah, called me the night before and whispered something that made my skin crawl. You need to see what he left behind. It's not just a house. It's a message. She wouldn't say more, just that she'd be there too. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. So I went. Back to the town I swore I'd never step foot in again. Back to the creaking old Victorian that still smelled like pipe tobacco and regret. The house we grew up in, where every wall held a story and most of them hurt. The funeral was awkward. A few old friends of his. Some neighbors. No eulogies, no music, just a cold wind that blew through the church like someone wanted us all to leave quickly. Afterward, the lawyer handed me a will. It was handwritten, full of scratches and crossed-out lines. My father had left everything to me. Not to Leah. Just me. She didn't even look surprised. You always were his favorite, she said, voice flat. Even after you left. But I wasn't buying it. We both knew he hadn't spoken a word to either of us in years. I spent the first night back in the house sleeping on the couch in the living room, the one with the springs that jab your back. The heating didn't work, and something in the walls kept clicking like a slow metronome counting down to something. In the morning, I walked the perimeter of the property, key in hand, looking for a lock that didn't belong. I found it in the floorboards beneath the attic rug. A small brass latch, almost invisible if you weren't looking for it. It matched the key perfectly. The compartment opened with a soft hiss of air like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside was a bundle of letters, brittle with age. And on top of them, a photograph I'd never seen before, my mother, younger, holding a baby I didn't recognize. But here's the thing. I was an only child. Or so I'd been told. I stared at the photo for a full minute before my hands started shaking. My mother was unmistakable, freckles, auburn hair tied back in that loose braid she always wore when she was overwhelmed. But the baby wasn't me. Too small. Too early. The back of the photo had only 2 words, written in the same sharp, slanted handwriting as the note that came with the key. He knows. I don't know how long I sat there on the dusty attic floor, surrounded by silence and insulation fuzz, staring at that photo like it might blink and explain itself. By the time I came back downstairs, Leah was sitting in the kitchen, sipping black coffee from one of Dad's chipped mugs like she lived there. No knock, no hello. Just there. I figured you'd find it, she said without looking up. I slammed the photo on the table in front of her. Who is this? She didn't flinch. That's why he wrote me out, she said softly. Because I threatened to tell you. Tell me what? She pushed the mug aside and leaned in like she was about to share a secret she'd been choking on for years. You're not the oldest. My whole body went still. What? There was a baby before you. A boy. Born when Mom was just 18. She gave him up. Dad didn't want to, but she insisted. Said she wasn't ready. She pulled a cigarette from her coat pocket and lit it with a practiced hand, even though she'd quit years ago. The smoke curled around her face like fog creeping in. They said he was adopted by a couple from another state. We were never supposed to know about him. But Dad, he never let it go. She paused, letting the silence thicken. He spent years trying to find him. Said it was the biggest mistake of his life. I felt like I was standing in someone else's story, someone else's life. Why wouldn't he tell me? Because he thought if he could find him first, he could fix it. Make it right. I think he planned to tell you when he was ready. But he never got that far. I looked down at the letters from the attic. Dozens of them, all unopened. All addressed to the same person. Matthew Bell. None of us have that last name. I picked up one of the envelopes. The return address was from 5 years ago, somewhere in Oregon. That meant Dad had found him. Why would he hide this? Leah took another drag from her cigarette, her eyes glassy now. Because he was protecting you. Or maybe he was protecting himself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the clicking in the walls, louder now, like something or someone wanted out. At 3:12 a.m., the doorbell rang. One long buzz. I crept to the front window and peeked through the blinds. A man was standing at the doorstep, soaked from the rain. He looked exactly like my father did 30 years ago. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, frozen behind the curtain, heart thudding in that sickening, hollow way it does when your body knows something before your brain catches up. The man wasn't moving. Just standing there under the porch light, rain dripping from his dark hair, eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't knock again. I glanced at the photo still lying on the hallway table. The resemblance was impossible to deny. Same jawline, Same thick eyebrows that always made my dad look like he was on the verge of saying something cutting. It was like looking at a ghost nobody told me existed. I don't know what made me open the door. Curiosity? Stupidity? Some strange gravitational pull between bloodlines? He didn't speak at first. He just stared at me, scanning my face like he was trying to find something familiar. "You're him," he said finally. His voice cracked halfway through. I didn't know what to say. "Who are you?" He let out a breath like it had been trapped in his lungs for years. "My name's Matthew," he said. "I think I'm your brother." My legs nearly gave out. He stepped back, sensing my shock. "I didn't come for anything. I got a letter. From your father. 2 weeks ago." He pulled a crumpled envelope from his coat pocket and held it out. My fingers trembled as I took it. The handwriting was unmistakably Dad's, but this letter was dated 1 day before he died. I unfolded the single page inside. "Matthew, if you're reading this, then you've come further than I ever managed. I failed you. There's no excuse. But everything I couldn't say is in the house. Under the floor in the study. You'll need both of them to find it. I hope you can forgive me." "Are both of what?" I asked, looking up. Matthew pulled something from a chain around his neck, an identical key. "The same as mine." That's when Leah's voice came sharp from behind me. "You shouldn't be here." She was at the foot of the stairs, barefoot, her expression unreadable. Matthew didn't flinch. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Oh, you already have," she said coldly. "That key was never meant for you." He raised his eyebrows. "Funny. Dad seemed to think otherwise." Before I could say anything, Leah stormed past us into the study and dropped to her knees in the middle of the hardwood floor. She started yanking at the rug, revealing another hidden latch. Another compartment. One I hadn't noticed before. Matthew and I exchanged a look. My mouth went dry. "I'm only going to show you this once," she said, breathless now. "But you need to understand something first." She lifted the hatch. Inside was a gun. And a birth certificate. She held it up slowly, letting us see it clearly. "Your real name," she said, turning to me, "is not what you think." I didn't recognize it at first. The name on the birth certificate wasn't mine. It wasn't any of ours. Nathaniel Rhodes. Born May 14th, 1988. Same birth date as mine. But that wasn't the name I'd grown up with. That wasn't the name on my school ID, my driver's license, my passport. That wasn't me. But it was my father's last name. Why would he change it? I asked, barely above a whisper. Leah didn't answer right away. Her fingers hovered over the gun like she wasn't sure whether to hand it to me or hide it again. "He didn't want you traced," she finally said. "Not by anyone." I blinked. "Traced? By who?" She looked at Matthew, then back at me. "Do you really think he gave you different keys just for some emotional scavenger hunt?" Dad didn't trust either of us fully. Matthew stepped forward, fist clenched. "What are you saying, Leah?" She exhaled shakily. "He didn't just find you, Matthew. He paid someone to erase your trail before he died. All those letters you never got? He sent them. Someone intercepted them." My mind was spinning. "Wait, Dad hired someone to keep him hidden?" "No," she said. "To keep you hidden. Both of you." The weight of the truth hit like a punch to the ribs. All those silent years, all the tension, Dad wasn't just distant. He was protecting something. Or someone. Leah handed me the birth certificate. "You weren't supposed to know your real name. Not until it was safe." I stared down at the paper. Something about it didn't sit right. There was a number scribbled on the back. A bank account? Coordinates? Matthew was already searching the rest of the compartment. Beneath the gun was a folder. Inside, medical records. Legal documents. A notarized power of attorney. And one more envelope. This one was sealed in wax. Matthew opened it carefully. Inside was a photo of our mother, older now, standing next to a man I'd never seen before. She was alive. The date on the back of the photo was last year. Leah stepped back like she'd seen a ghost. "That's not possible. She died when I was 13. "No," I said slowly, heart hammering. "That's what Dad told us." Matthew's face went pale. "Then who the hell did we bury?" Before anyone could respond, there was a loud, deliberate knock at the front door. 3 knocks. A pause. Then 2 more. I glanced at the others. No one moved. The knocks came again. This time harder. Then a voice, calm, male, unfamiliar, called through the door. "We know what you found. Open the door, or we come in." None of us moved. For a moment, the only sound was the wind pressing against the old windows like a nervous breath. Then came the metallic rattle, someone trying the doorknob. Leah grabbed the gun from the hidden compartment and cocked it without hesitation. It looked too natural in her hand. "Since when do you know how to use that?" I asked, my voice tight. She didn't look at me. "Since I was 15. Dad made me learn." Matthew's eyes darted toward the windows. "Back exit? Leads to the alley," I said. "But if they're watching us, they already know that." Another knock. Slower this time. Mocking. Matthew stepped closer to the front of the house and pulled the curtain back an inch. His face changed instantly. "There's 2 of them," he whispered. Black SUV. No plates. One's on the porch. The other's standing by the garden. The same garden where Dad died. Wait, I said, trying to piece it together. They said they knew what we found, but we didn't even open the full folder yet. Matthew turned toward me. Unless they weren't talking about us. We looked down at the documents still scattered on the study floor. In the file Dad left us was another sealed envelope, this one addressed to someone named W.S. I opened it. Inside was a short letter, typed this time. If you're reading this, then it means I've failed. I couldn't protect them all. I thought time would bury the truth, but secrets rot in the ground. They know about the land. And the tunnels. It's not about inheritance. It never was. Burn this after reading. Tunnels? Matthew repeated. What the hell does that mean? But Leah wasn't listening. She was staring down at a blueprint tucked behind the letter. It looked like a schematic of the house. Old. Faded. But unmistakable. There was a crawl space. Beneath the study. I ripped up the old carpet, heart pounding, and found another panel. This one wasn't hidden. It was just old, so old the wood groaned when I pried it up. Beneath it was a narrow opening, barely wide enough for one person at a time. Matthew peered into the darkness and pulled out his phone for light. This leads somewhere. There's a path. Pipes. Reinforced walls. A sharp bang at the front door made all of us jump. Leah pointed toward the crawl space. Go. Now. What about you? I'll buy us time. I know this house better than they do. Before I could argue, she shoved me toward the opening. Matthew dropped in first. I followed, the smell of damp earth filling my nose, the kind that settles into your skin and never fully leaves. We crawled for what felt like forever. My knees scraped raw, the air growing colder with every foot. Then, light. Faint, flickering. We reached a small chamber lit by a single hanging bulb, still miraculously alive. The room was lined with crates. Paper files. Rusted cabinets. Old cassette tapes labeled with initials. And a map. Matthew lifted it off the wall. His voice was dry with disbelief. This isn't just tunnels. It's a whole network. And in red ink, circled dead center. Our family name. But before we could make sense of it, we heard a thud behind us. Not the front door. The entrance to the crawl space had been sealed shut. The sound of the hatch slamming shut echoed down the tunnel like a final verdict. We were trapped. Matthew lunged back toward the crawl space, fist pounding on the panel above. Leah, he shouted. Leah, open it. Nothing. No reply. Just silence. Heavy and impenetrable. I grabbed his arm. We don't know what's happening up there. He looked at me, breathing hard. We also don't know what's down here. Fair point. We turned back to the chamber. It was bigger than I'd thought at first glance. Walls lined with metal shelving, each one stacked with manila folders, reel-to-reel tapes, and faded photos in clear plastic sleeves. All of it smelled like mildew and dust and secrets that had waited decades to breathe. Matthew pulled open one of the drawers and whistled low under his breath. These are surveillance records. He showed me a page, black and white photos of our house from different angles. Front, back, attic window. All dated between 1992 and 2001. The years we were kids. The years Mom disappeared. I pulled out another folder labeled Subject. ER. That was Mom's name. Elise Rhodes. Inside were psychiatric notes, transcripts of phone calls, one of them labeled confidential, not to be shared with patient. I started reading, but my eyes snagged on a highlighted line. Patient believes she is being surveilled by Rhodes Trust. Has mentioned hidden ledger and financial breach. What the hell is the Rhodes Trust? I asked. Matthew turned toward the back wall. I think it's this. He had opened one of the crates. Inside were old bank statements. Offshore accounts. Wires sent to multiple countries. All in the name of the Rhodes Family Trust. I thought Dad was broke, I whispered. Matthew shook his head, jaw clenched. He wasn't. He was laundering. I felt the ground shift beneath me, not literally, but emotionally. Like everything I thought I understood had just turned to static. That's when I spotted the small safe in the corner. Old school dial, thick with grime. No keypad. No fingerprint. Just numbers. Try your birthday, Matthew said. I did. Nothing. Then I tried Nathaniel's birthday. My real one. The one on the forged certificate. Click. The door creaked open, and inside was a flash drive sealed in plastic, a leather-bound notebook, and a photo I hadn't seen before. It was our father, standing beside a man in military uniform, both smiling. And behind them, a steel vault door, just like this one. I opened the notebook. Inside were pages of notes, diagrams, and two names circled over and over again. Leah Rhodes. W.S. She knew about this, I muttered. Matthew stared at the photo. And so did he. I turned to him. Who's W.S.? Before he could answer, we heard a sound from behind the wall. A soft click, then grinding. Something was opening. One of the shelves began to shift. Slowly. Mechanically. It slid aside, revealing a second tunnel, this one lit by dim industrial bulbs running down into what looked like a corridor of concrete and steel. "Do we go?" I asked. Matthew's jaw tightened. We didn't come this far to turn back. As we stepped through the threshold, the lights flickered above us. And from somewhere deep inside the corridor, a woman's voice echoed. "Nathaniel." I stopped cold. It was my mother's voice. And it was coming from inside the tunnels. I hadn't heard her voice in over 20 years. Not even in dreams. It was like my brain had locked that sound away in some backroom of memory, too painful to access. But now, in that cold, humming corridor, the sound of my mother saying my name cracked something deep inside me. "Nathaniel," she called again. Closer this time. Less ghostly, more real. Matthew froze beside me. That's not possible. I stepped forward anyway, drawn by something I couldn't explain. "It's her." "I know it is." We followed the voice down the tunnel. The air grew colder with each step, metallic and stale, like breathing inside a locked filing cabinet. The floor sloped downward gently, and the walls narrowed. We passed more doors, some sealed, some slightly ajar, each marked with alphanumeric codes and faded hazard stickers. Finally, we reached a chamber. Square, windowless, lined with screens and blinking lights. At the center stood a woman in a gray coat, facing away from us, her hand resting on a computer terminal. "Mom?" I asked. She didn't move. I stepped closer. My heart thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Mom," I repeated. "It's me." She turned, and the face I saw wasn't quite hers. Same eyes. Same high cheekbones. But older than I remembered. And colder. She looked at me like someone trying to place a face from a dream. "I wasn't supposed to see you again," she said quietly. My throat tightened. "But you're alive." She nodded. "Barely." Matthew stepped in beside me. "Why are you here? Why now?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and something changed in her face. Softer. Sadder. "You look just like him," she said. "Like your father, before he became what he became." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Dad said you were dead. We buried you." She almost smiled. "No. You buried someone else. A woman who tried to help me disappear." My knees felt weak. "Why would he lie to us?" "Because your father," she said, voice sharpening, "wasn't the man you think he was." Matthew took a step back. "He protected us." She turned to him slowly. "No. He built all of this. The tunnels. The surveillance. The lies." Then she pressed a button on the terminal. A screen behind her flickered to life. Footage rolled. Grainy black and white surveillance tapes. Our house. Dad in the study. Leah pacing in the hallway. Me, as a child, being led into the basement by someone I didn't recognize. "What is this?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Proof," she said. "That your father was running something much darker than you know. That Leah helped him cover it up." I stared at the screen, a chill running down my spine. But then Matthew asked the question I was too afraid to voice. "What did they do to us?" She turned, eyes wide with something between guilt and grief. And then she said it. "You were part of a trial. You were never supposed to leave that house." I felt it in my stomach first, a sick, slow churn that made me want to tear something out of myself. "A trial?" I echoed. "What do you mean we were part of a trial?" My mother, or the woman who used to be, turned away from the screen and started pacing. Her hands trembled, and for the first time, she looked scared of us. "They started it before either of you were born," she said. "Your father wasn't just some grieving man searching for a lost child. He was part of something bigger. Funded, secret, sanctioned. At least at first." Matthew was stone-faced. "Sanctioned by who?" She looked up. "The government." But it wasn't long before he cut them out and kept going alone. She walked over to a rusted metal cabinet and pulled out a file with my name on it. "No, Nathaniel." She handed it to me with shaking fingers. I opened it. Inside were medical charts, developmental records, psychological assessments. Some pages were stamped classified. But the part that turned my blood to ice was a photo of me, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with electrodes stuck to my head. I was crying. And Dad was in the background, calmly writing notes. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Matthew's voice came from behind me, hollow. "They were studying us." Mom, or Elise, I guess, nodded slowly. "Behavioral conditioning. Environmental triggers. Genetic manipulation in some cases. But mostly observation." He believed in something called controlled emotional architecture. Said if he could craft the perfect childhood environment, he could create a new kind of human stability. She sat down like the weight of her own words was too much. Except it didn't work. "You both," pushed back. Matthew ran a hand through his hair, laughing bitterly. "So we weren't raised. We were engineered." I couldn't speak. All those strange memories, the locked doors, the routines that made no sense, the way Leah would whisper things to me when Dad wasn't around like she was reading from a script, it all started to make a sick kind of sense. I looked up at Elise. "Where's Leah?" She hesitated. "Still upstairs, I assume." "You're lying," I said. She looked away. Matthew stepped toward her. What happened to her? Elise reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small remote, sleek, matte black, with a single red button in the center. She has her own program, she said. Separate from yours. What does that mean? I asked, my voice sharp now. What program? She held the remote up between two fingers. Your father made her the failsafe. We both stared. Elise, I said carefully, what happens if you press that button? Her voice dropped to a whisper. She forgets everything. And then, she does exactly what she was trained to do. We didn't have time to respond. Because right then, the screen behind us flickered again. And Leah appeared. She was standing in the attic, staring into the camera like she knew we were watching. She smiled. Then she said, I warned you not to trust anyone. And pressed a button of her own. The screen went black. All of us froze. The hum of the tunnel lights felt suddenly louder, more menacing. Something was happening above us. We could feel it, like the air had thickened. Matthew turned to Elise. What did she just activate? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Then finally, the house is wired, she said, eyes wide. He built it that way in case anyone came too close to the truth. Leah was the insurance policy. I stared at her. You're saying my sister is, what? A walking dead man switch. She shook her head. No. She's not just a trigger. She's the final phase. The lights in the tunnel dimmed. A deep, vibrating thud echoed above us, followed by a slow, grinding sound. Not an explosion, something worse. Structural shift. She's collapsing it, Elise gasped. She's locking us in. Matthew was already moving. He grabbed the flash drive and the notebook from the safe and threw them into his backpack. We need to find another way out. We ran back through the corridor, the tunnel lights blinking like dying stars. Another sound started behind us, a soft, repetitive clink clink clink. I turned around. My breath caught. A drone. Small. Silent. Camera blinking red. It hovered there like a wasp, watching. Elise screamed. Don't let it scan you. But it was too late. A red laser darted across my chest. And then I heard the click. A soft, familiar beep from my own jacket pocket. I reached in and pulled out the old key Dad had mailed me, the one that opened the attic latch. Except now, it was glowing. Matthew backed away. Why is it doing that? I stared at it, realization dawning in slow-motion horror. It's not a key. He looked confused. Then what is? It's a tracker. Elise finished for me. And it's not glowing. It's arming. My heart stopped. Why would he send me something like that? She didn't meet my eyes. Matthew turned to her, voice rising. What aren't you telling us? Then, from behind us, another voice. Calm. Robotic. Protocol 9 initiated. Target, Nathaniel Rhodes. Reacquisition authorized. I spun around. Another drone. Then two more. They weren't scanning anymore. They were locking on. Elise shoved me hard. Run. I'm not leaving you. Run. We sprinted back down the tunnel, the wall shaking now, the ceiling shedding flakes of concrete and dust. I could hear the drones behind us, the high-pitched whine of a charging weapon or something worse. We reached another junction in the tunnels, barely visible through the flickering lights. There were 3 doors, each marked only by a single digit. 1, 3, and 6. Matthew looked at me. Pick one. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed door 3, threw it open, and inside was a ladder, rusted, narrow, leading up into darkness. We climbed. Fast. I could hear metal clanging below. Someone was following us. Or something. At the top of the ladder was another hatch. I threw it open and climbed out into it. A nursery. Dusty. Abandoned. Toys frozen mid-play. Crib with yellowed sheets. A mobile above it, still gently spinning. Matthew climbed out behind me, staring. Where the hell are we? I turned slowly. This was my childhood room. But we were nowhere near the main house. The windows looked out on a forest. Wild. Overgrown. Matthew pointed at the wall. Is that? A camera. Pointed inward. And beside it, mounted to the wall, a plaque. Subject, Nathaniel. Phase 3, observe emotional isolation. The door to the room creaked open. And a voice, low, male, spoke from the hallway. Welcome home, Nathaniel. Your trial isn't over yet. The voice was calm, measured. But it had that tone, the kind doctors use when they're about to tell you the truth in a way that feels like mercy. I turned toward the doorway. My body froze, but my mind sprinted in every direction at once. Matthew stood behind me, silent, tense. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Then he stepped into the room. He was older. Late 60s, maybe. Clean cut. Dark sweater, dark slacks. The kind of man you'd trust if you passed him in a bank or a courtroom. Something about him felt designed. And he looked familiar. Not like a relative. Like a reflection. If my father had been split down the middle and reassembled with surgical coldness. He looked at me with a small, clinical smile. You're taller than I expected. Who are you? I asked. He stepped forward, eyes scanning the room like it was a museum exhibit. I'm the man your father couldn't become, and the one he tried to recreate through you. Matthew moved to stand beside me. So, you're W.S. He nodded. Dr. William Stanton, head of the original roads project. Before your father hijacked it. I blinked. You knew him. He was my partner, Stanton said. Until he decided to take the experiment private. He believed emotional conditioning should be personal. That children raised under engineered circumstances could produce predictable, measurable outcomes. You were his masterpiece, Nathaniel. I could hardly breathe. Stanton gestured around the room. This wasn't your childhood. It was your simulation. Recreated perfectly off-site. Observed for years. Matthew's voice cracked. Why? Why go to these lengths? Stanton finally looked at him. Because you weren't supposed to survive, Matthew. Silence dropped like a curtain. What? Matthew whispered. You were phase 0, Stanton continued. Uncontrolled. Unmeasured. A variable your father couldn't replicate. So he erased you. But he found me, Matthew said. He wrote to me. Too late, Stanton replied. The damage was done. My legs gave out and I sat on the floor, right beneath the spinning mobile above the crib. My entire life, every fight, every scar, every memory, wasn't just twisted. It was curated. So why bring us here? I asked quietly. Why now? Stanton crouched in front of me, his voice almost kind. Because your father died before he could finish phase 4. And whether you want to or not, you're going to complete it. I stared at him. What the hell is phase 4? He stood and walked over to the wall, pressing a panel I hadn't noticed. A hidden drawer slid open. Inside, a vial. Glowing faint blue. Cold mist curling off the glass. This, he said, is the trigger. The real one. Matthew stepped back. What does it do? It ends the experiment, Stanton said. It frees you from everything you built. And what's the cost? I asked, already knowing. Stanton turned, smiled again. Everything else. I looked at Matthew. He looked at me. And then the floor shook. A deep, resonant vibration beneath us. Stanton's smile faded. No, that wasn't. Then a voice crackled through the wall speaker. It was Leah. I rewired your failsafe, Doctor. You never should have taught me how to build things you weren't willing to destroy. Stanton's eyes went wide. Enjoy the fallout, Leah said sweetly. It's all coming down now. The floor trembled again. This time sharper, angrier, like the earth itself had finally had enough of secrets. Stanton spun toward the hallway. No, she wouldn't. A deafening crack interrupted him. Somewhere above us, something massive had split open. Dust rained down from the ceiling vents. The mobile above the crib swung violently, a lullaby melody playing in slow, warped tones like a music box winding down mid-scream. She's detonating the support structures, Stanton muttered, his voice suddenly fragile. She's killing everything. Matthew grabbed the vial from the open drawer. Then let's go. But Stanton lunged forward, surprisingly fast for his age. You don't understand what you're holding. Matthew shoved him back with a force I didn't know he had. Stanton hit the wall, hard. I turned to him. What is this really? His breathing was shallow now. A neural suppressant. It'll sever the anchors your father implanted. The responses. The reflexes. All the programming. He looked at me with something that almost resembled regret. It'll make you you. For the first time. And him? I asked, motioning to Matthew. Stanton hesitated. He wasn't programmed. But he was watched. For decades. If that serum touches him, he'll lose the map of everything your father left behind. All the access codes. Every trace of the vault. Matthew's eyes narrowed. Vault. Stanton coughed, a thin stream of blood at the corner of his mouth. The final asset. Not money. Not property. Evidence. Names. Transactions. People still alive. People who would burn everything down to keep it buried. That's when I realized. We were holding the key to not just our past, but dozens of others. Whispers echoed from the hallway. Not voices. Recordings. They played from hidden speakers, loops of Dad's voice. Of mine. Of hers. My mother. Nathaniel. Do you remember the story about the wolves? One is fear, the other is truth. Which one survives? The one you feed, I whispered. The walls cracked. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Stanton looked at us one last time, then slumped against the wall. You want answers? Don't take the vial. You want freedom? Inject it, and forget everything. Matthew held up the syringe. We don't even know if this is real. It could kill us. Or it could kill him, I said, glancing toward Stanton. Another explosion. Closer. The hallway now glowed orange, fire. The house was eating itself. I turned to Matthew, eyes stinging from smoke and betrayal. What do we do? He looked down at the vial. Then at me. I think it's your choice, he said. It always has been. And just as I reached for the syringe, a gunshot rang out. Stanton gasped, slumped forward. Leah stood in the hallway, smoke curling around her, gun still raised. But it wasn't pointed at Stanton anymore. It was pointed at me. You take that serum, she said coldly, and everything we suffered becomes meaningless. So make your decision, brother. The world narrowed to her finger on the trigger. I couldn't move. Leah stood framed in smoke and firelight like a ghost conjured from every lie we'd ever been told. Her hair was soaked with sweat, her shirt torn at the shoulder. But her eyes, God, her eyes were steady. Empty. Matthew stepped between us, hands up. Leah, don't, she said. This isn't about you. I could feel the syringe burning cold in my palm. You think taking that makes you a hero? She snapped. You think wiping your mind frees you from what we went through? I didn't choose any of this. I shouted. She took a step forward. Neither did I, but I remember it. Every test. Every night they locked me in a room and told me to smile when I wanted to scream. You think erasing that pain makes you better than me? Matthew tried again, gentler this time. You don't have to do this. She almost laughed. I already did. I destroyed every lab. Every server. This house is a funeral pyre now, and all that's left is whether she jabbed the gun toward me, dies a clean slate, or carries the truth. I looked down at the vial. It shimmered, faint and eerie. I could feel it, like it knew it was alive in my hand. Like it wanted something. I don't want to forget, I said finally. But I can't carry his version of me anymore. Leah's hands trembled. Just a little. Then don't. I stared at her. Come with us. She blinked. What? You said it yourself. You remember everything. You know more than anyone. Help us take it public. Burn the rest from the outside. The fire was behind her now, creeping up the walls. If we inject this, I said, we lose the map. We lose the trail. But if we destroy it, together, we can finish this the right way. The gun wavered. Her jaw clenched. You made me forget you once already. I took a slow step forward. So remember now. Remember the real version. Not the one he designed. The heat was unbearable. Matthew pulled a metal box from beneath the crib, a fireproof case. He shoved the syringe inside and slammed it shut. Leah stared at it. Then at me. Finally, she lowered the gun. And for the first time in decades, her voice cracked. Okay. We ran. Through collapsing corridors. Past flaming walls and falling beams. Stanton's body burned in silence. We didn't look back. We found a hatch at the far end of the tunnel network, hidden behind a wall of shattered drywall. It led into the woods miles from where we entered. No cameras. No drones. No one waiting. Just three of us. Alive. We collapsed in the dirt, coughing, our lungs full of ash and relief. Leah held my hand like she hadn't in 20 years. Matthew opened the fireproof case. The vial was still glowing. And beneath it, tucked inside the lining, was something we hadn't noticed before. A second syringe. Labeled, Leah. The second vial sat in the lining like it had been waiting all along. Matthew held it up, his hand trembling just slightly. He had one for her, too. Leah stared at the label. Her name, in neat, clinical letters. No code. No alias. Just Leah. She didn't say anything. I didn't know, I said softly. I swear, I didn't know there were two. She nodded, slowly. I believe you. Matthew looked between us. Do you want to destroy it? Leah didn't answer. She took the vial from him, turned it in her fingers, the liquid inside glowing with that same faint blue light. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Like it knew her. And then she said the one thing I never expected. No. Matthew frowned. No. I'm not destroying it, she said. I still on the vial. And I'm not taking it. She stood, brushing the dirt from her clothes. I'm keeping it. I blinked. Why? She looked at me, and I swear I saw the girl she used to be flicker in her eyes, brilliant, dangerous, and hurt. Because it's the only leverage I have left. I didn't understand at first. But she turned toward the trees, toward the world we'd been kept from, and added. I'm going to find them. The others. The ones who funded this. The ones who watched. Matthew stood too. Leah. You too. You're done, she said, without bitterness. You've earned that. You can go rebuild. Forget. Breathe. She turned to me. But me? I can't. I remember everything. And I'm not wasting that anymore. I reached out, and she let me hug her. For real this time. No tension. No walls. Just siblings in a moment we never got to have before. When she pulled away, she smiled. Tell the truth. Or don't. But whatever you do, don't lie to yourself anymore. And just like that, she disappeared into the woods. Matthew and I stood there for a long time, watching the smoke rise behind us in the distance, the last remnants of that cursed house crumbling into ash. In the weeks that followed, we tried to bring the evidence to light. We contacted journalists, dropped files anonymously, sent copies of the surveillance to encrypted servers around the world. Some people listened. Most didn't. The Rhodes Trust was real. The experiment was real. But truth, I learned, isn't what survives. It's what we choose to carry. As for the vial, we buried it. Not to forget. but to remind ourselves that the past, no matter how controlled or twisted or programmed, was still ours. Ours to own. Ours to confront. Ours to break free from. And some nights, when it's quiet, I wonder where Leah is. I wonder how far she's gone. How deep this network really went. And whether one day she'll use that second vial. Not to erase what was done to her, but to become something no one could ever control again.